Afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Zuper, and today we are going to walk through this intermediate guide, Livepeer with Docker and Portainer for operating at scale. You can find this on the Livepeer forums. It will not be an exact walkthrough of this document. I think you guys can read through this and follow through. We are going to follow the spirit of this document, but my walkthrough is going to be a little more task oriented, and I'll try to provide a little bit of commentary along the way to explain some of the things that we're going to be doing. But again, I think if you actually read through this document and follow it straight through, you'll be able to bring up your orchestrator, transcoder, Portainer, UI, and everything will work perfectly. Again, this is an advanced guide geared toward those orchestrators and operators for Livepeer that understand the configuration, understand the files and the different parts of the architecture here. So we won't be covering those things. We will be doing a bit of Docker setup. There's a Portainer license required here. Thankfully, they provide some free nodes, so that's really cool to get started. There will be some DNS, and again, I think the rest of this document we're gonna go through and follow a series of notes that I have. So I'm going to switch over to the Linux server where I have one server is running my orchestrator and another server is running my transcoder. So I have those two terminals open and ready. Nothing is installed on these servers, but I have a readme file that I prepared to walk us through our tasks that we want to accomplish today. And if you see here, what we're going to need to understand how to be a Livepeer orchestrator, right? We talked about Linux commands and knowing some Docker, but here are the DNS entries that I'm going to be using today. This is my DNS, livepeer.tools, and it's throwaway. I'm not using it for anything real, just this walkthrough. So you'll see here I have two VPSs, VPS number 1 and VPS number 2. They are the IP addresses, and their uses, right? So the first VPS is going to have multiple usage. It's going to be running the Portainer Edge agent with that DNS. It's going to be using the Portainer management UI on this DNS. And then we're also going to have Orc Livepeer running there, which is the standalone orchestrator. That's no GPU. And then the GPU VPS that we're going to be running today will be for our Livepeer remote transcoder and our combined orchestrator transcoder. That's the primary focus for this, is to make sure we understand getting this combined use case working, get monitoring up and running with it. But I'll throw in the standalone orchestrator and transcoder as a little bonus to just tie the whole walkthrough up. The other thing you'll need is an email address tied to the DNS that you have here, because we'll be generating SSL certificates through Traefik and Let's Encrypt. So you'll need that for that to work. So we're going to go through 10 steps here and walk through each of these and get them out of the way. I would like to start first and foremost getting the Linux work out of the way. So installing software and configuring Linux, doing the things that we need to do on the Linux server first, and that covers the first 3 parts. So we can talk more as we get into this, but let's dig in first. As I mentioned, we're going to need to install Docker Compose on both VPSs. So I'm going to switch over to the guide here just to grab those steps. So you'll see here, removing any prior Docker versions. Right, Docker is not installed on the orchestrator. Let's go to the transcoder here, and no Docker. Perfect. So now again, I like to run these individually just to make sure I don't make any mistakes. So I'm going to run apt update on both servers. All right. Install the certificates. These are just tools and things needed when running the orchestrator, like systools or systat, nettools, wget. We'll be using those commands today. All right. It looks like they're already installed here. And again, depending on your VPS, same thing, they're already installed here. All right, so the next thing is installing the key rings for Docker so that we can download or install using apt. So there, that one's done for the key ring. And again, I'm switching between both servers. So if you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, focus on one at a time. But we're doing it specific because they're both the same. So and the last one for Docker here is to get this key ring and update the repo. So let's, again, on the orchestrator, no output, that's good. And then on the transcoder, no output, that's good. All right, so now that that's installed, we should be able to see that the repositories now have Docker. You'll see here, downloading from Docker, that's a good sign. Let's see, transcoder, let's go ahead and check the orchestrator. And again, Docker's in there, so that's a good sign. Okay, now again, the next step is to install Docker, and then after that, we'll enable it to auto start. So let's keep moving. So on the orchestrator, I'm running it, and you see it's going ahead and installing. I'm going to go over here while that's running, and I'll do the same. We'll focus on one server. This step here is critical for all Docker installations. So I don't care if you're running Livepeer or not. If you want to get up and running with Docker and Docker Compose, these are the steps you're going to have to take. All right, so it looks like that one's done, and it looks like we have an error here. I'm going to just system, let's stop Docker. I don't think Docker is running. Docker PS. Okay, so it's not. And then let's remove Docker. Thought we did that. And in this case, what I'll do a little differently here is I'll do the star, because in the command, if you notice, maybe it was named something differently. So it says Docker. It could have been Docker CE. There's different packages. So let me just do Docker star and say yes. And now you can see here in this case, it actually was Docker CE. So that's cool. Live troubleshooting here, which wasn't the case on my transcoder. So good troubleshooting. Let's clear this and try to update. All right, and then we want to install Docker. There we go. Now it's installing it properly. And it is Docker CE, it looks like. Okay. All right, perfect. So now if we do a Docker PS or Docker -v, and we can see that version. Now let's go over here and make sure it's running there. Docker PS. So he's not enabled yet, but we'll get to that. Docker -v. Okay. So it looks like the version's good. Now let's go ahead and auto start this service here. So now if we look, you can see. Now let's do Docker PS. So it looks like this orchestrator is good. Now let's see what's happening here. Docker. Let's just see if we can stop it. All right, and then let's Docker enable. Okay, Docker PS. Okay, so he is running. Looks like this had a previous installation on it, which is good because again, if you had stuff running on your VPS, you'd be doing the same work here. So it looks like I had some prior containers running on here, Catvisor and Node Exporter, which again, these are fundamental tools when we get to monitoring, and we'll get to those in a second. But let's see here, Docker PS. Now there's nothing running. Now in this case, if I want to ensure nothing else is going to be running on here, I'm going to do a Docker system prune. And what that's going to do is it's going to remove containers, networks, images, caches, anything. So in that way, now we know with certainty that nothing is left running here. And I'll do the same here, Docker system prune. All right. Boom. Now this one obviously, hey, it looks like there were a couple of leftover networks here. So, all right, that's good. Now, again, we have totally cleaned it up and we've totally installed Docker and we've enabled it. And it looks like we're good. So we're going to keep on moving here. We're going to install Docker Compose. All right, Docker Compose -v, and we're good. All right, let's do that on this server. Docker Compose -v. Okay, so everything's looking good. Again, we downloaded using the curl, grabbed it from the Docker Compose site, and then we had to make sure we have permissions to run it. All right, transcoder and orchestrator are both up to date. Now, at this point, this is where I'm going to diverge from the document. you can go ahead and move forward here if you want. And again, you will be, at the end, you'll have a successful installation. But I want to go back to my readme here and walk through what I intend to do. So at this point, we've installed Docker and Docker Compose, but we have not installed the Nvidia runtime for Docker on the transcoder. This step only runs on the VPS with the GPU enabled. So my goal is get the Linux work out of the way. Let's get Portainer and the Edge agent up and running. And then from there, it's going to be a browser-based workload from there. So we'll do most of everything from that point in the browser or in a text editor. So I think it makes it a little easier. So let's go, and I'm going to skip in the doc to get to the part where we need to install the transcoder Nvidia runtime. So you'll see step 2 is going to be Portainer. We're going to come back to that. We are going to do everything in here, but I'm just going to reorganize. Step 3 is the UI work, which again we're going to come back to. And then if you look, there's quite a few steps. Now, this is specific to transcoding. So we've done Docker on both servers. We've updated it. We've enabled it. Now, the parts that we didn't do are right here, where we're installing the NVIDIA runtime. So I'm going to do this right now on the transcoder server only. All right, so we're going to install NVIDIA. Now, this takes a little bit of time. The next steps we're going to do after we install the driver is we're going to turn off multi-user mode, like graphics mode on Linux. If you're running a server, you're not going to want to do that. This step takes a bit of time because it's installing, the driver modules needed for NVIDIA, and they're compiled and associated inside the kernel, so that can take some time. As you see here, the installation should just about be finished. Looks like it's all completing. All right, clear that output. Now again, disable multi-user, no problem. Now we're going to run this patch. Again, this one you can copy all as is. It's going to download a script. And again, this is verified content, so you don't have to worry about any, script kiddie attacks or anything. And then run the patch or change ownership and then run it. All right. And we've patched it. And then you'll see the output, Linux patched, we're good. And you'll see the output files. This might be important, so just keep in reference if you have to reapply the patch or uninstall it for some reason where you know where the files are located. All right, now the other part here is disabling auto updates. You don't want this driver getting updated now that it's patched. The operating system will do that, so we're going to apply those auto updates. All right, now the last part here is really making sure that the NVIDIA runtime is installed properly on the OS, and then testing to verify that Docker has access to the GPUs here. So again, we'll run these commands. You can run them individually, but I ran the keyring, app update, and the install in one go. And then you'll see here, now that's installed. Should be very quick. All right, so all that looks good. NVIDIA 2 is there. I want to restart Docker just to make sure it's picking up the latest configs. And now I'm going to clear. And now here's one more thing. The document at the time it was writing this CUDA base image has been modified by NVIDIA. And again, this stuff is real world, right? So you're going to have to deal with these kinds of things. So what I did is I was able to find the latest image prior to the call. I'm just, preparing for this walkthrough. And what I have is the new steps, or at least the new image name that is required for this. It's just a verification step. So instead of the 11.0 base, we'll look here and you'll see now it's 11.03 Devil Ubuntu 18.04. Don't ask me the naming conventions. It's what they do. I just find the test that I need, the image version that I need to verify. And then this is the one that I found is the most recent build. And I think they did a build about 2 weeks ago. So again, at the time of this, it may vary. So you'll see here, what we're doing is we're running Docker. We're saying when the container's finished, remove it. We're giving access to all GPUs, right? And this is the container image that we're going to use and its version. And then this is the command that we want to run, Nvidia SMI. And that's a tool that just prints out whether your graphics card's working. So you'll see here, our graphics card is working inside of Docker. Now, if we want to test it outside of Docker, we just do the same thing, Nvidia SMI, but without invoking it through Docker, okay? So we do run that, and you'll see the same output. It's just proving that we have access in the container environment to access the transcoding capabilities. Now, again, the document talks about the version numbers and making sure, and that's cool. Now you'll see here, it's gonna jump right back into the UI. I wanted to get all the Linux work out of the way in advance before doing any UI work. Now, if we go back here, we're gonna pick up where we left off, and what you'll see after Docker, we're gonna start getting into Portainer and Traefik. For now, we are on the orchestrator, so you can see it's on VPS1. VPS1 is our orchestrator, and that's the box we're on. So we were doing our work on the transcoder. Now we're going to go over to the orchestrator. And what we're going to do here is configure Docker, configure Traefik. And that's the steps that we're going to go through here. So in your favorite text editor, right, you're going to want to open up, I use VI, this says nano. You're going to copy and paste this entire section and take note that Traefik has a Docker volume we're going to need to create. Also take note here that this is the part in which you're going to edit and add your domain here. So in our case, Portainer livepeer.tools, Portainer or edge.livepeer.tools. You'll need to put yours in here. And then you also want to take note that Portainer also has a volume that's going to be external. So we're going to be creating some volumes and some networks. In this case, Portainer is the default network. Okay. So this is all documented in here, so no worries. And again, the first part is getting this Docker compose file on the server and edit it. Now, instead of just writing it in this folder directly, I'm going to make a directory called Portainer, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to paste the file. I'm going to edit the file here. It's a preference for me. I might have multiple applications, and I don't want just any Docker compose file lingering without it being in a folder. Personal preference, Docker compose, can't type. We're going to take this as is, and we're going to make the modifications needed. All right, so if I look, I go up, I'm just going to get rid of some white space here. All right, there's a dashboard that comes with Traefik. You shouldn't enable this. If you're testing, it's probably a good thing, but in general, you're not going to want that enabled in production, so we have it turned off. Again, there's some ports here. We really don't need these comments, so I'm just going to get rid of them for now. And again, the same thing here. They're just commented it out. We don't need those. The important part here is this, getting Livepeer tools dot in there, and we're going to do the same for edge, Livepeer dot tools. Okay, and just to recap, when Trafik's running, our requests are going to come in either from this domain or from this domain. The Portainer domain is specific to the UI. The edge domain is specific to server and remote deployments, and we'll get to that in a second. So then here we are. All right, file's good. I'm going to save it. Now we're ready. So now here it talks about the domains. We mentioned that. And then some of the other commands to creating the network and that. So we're going to do those as well. Portainer networks created. Let's confirm it. And you'll see here it is. We're going to do Portainer data. Looks like it's good. Traefik, it's good. Now let's look at our volumes, make sure that those are working. Okay, Traefik and Portainer. Okay, so that's in place. Now the next part here is we got to get Traefik ready for SSL certificates. So if we go to the Traefik volume, and to take note that var lib docker volumes are where the Docker volumes are created. In this case, we want to look at Traefik, which is the name we gave it. And then there's always this underscore data folder you have to go into. That's just a Docker on Linux thing, right? So right now you'll see there's nothing here, but what we are going to want to do is create this Traefik YAML file so that we can tell Traefik what to do. Now, some of the things in here, again, not going to walk through all of this, but the most important thing as it relates to us, you just copy and paste this as is. But what you'll see here is there's a couple email entries, and this is the place where you need to make sure that your domain, the email tied to your domain to pass an HTTP challenge, which Let's Encrypt is set up. Now I have mine, so I'm going to get that going. But again, we're in the Traefik volume, and I'm going to create the Traefik YAML file. And I'm going to go in here and copy it. And I'm also going to make the changes necessary for this file. Now, I paste the file in, and I got to go in here and make changes to the necessary settings. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to move this screen out of the recording just until I can copy in the email, and then I'll bring it back in. Now, I will say, make sure you type it correctly. Make sure the section for staging and production match, because there's two places where you have to enter the same email, all right? If you don't do that, you will get errors. And I've typed the email wrong once or twice. Just, be patient. Make sure you double check it because it's critical to have that in place. Now, I've modified my file and it looks like we're ready to go. Let's go back to the document and continue on. So here again is the section where we are going to create a directory so that we can, when Let's Encrypt generates the certs, it'll download those certs and save them on the file system so that every time Traefik restarts, it won't need to do it again. And again, I'm just literally copying these commands as is and running them. So I paste that and run it, and you'll see now we have a certs folder here as well. All right, now at this point, we're ready to bring up the environment. Now you'll see there's two ways of doing it. One is in the foreground and another is in the background. We'll bring it up in the foreground just to confirm that everything's working. Now, for this to work, I put my Docker Compose file in a Portainer folder, so I got to go back to that directory. And for those who are following, right, it's root Portainer, and then you'll see the Docker Compose file here. Now I'm going to bring Docker Compose up. Now it looks like everything's up, right? Nice and easy. No certs found. Now we should see the generation come in the background here. So let's flip back over. Now in this case, we're going to want to go to our Portainer server. And again, it's Portainer dot, in our case, is Livepeer tools. Okay. Now you'll see it's working, right? And if we take a look at the settings here, certificate is valid. You see it's for this domain, and it's issued through Let's Encrypt. So this is perfect. This is exactly where we want it. Valid search right off the bat. Now, in this case, you need to enter your super secure password, and you can allow or not allow. Gotta enter something a little more complicated. All right, boom. Now, this is the part where you're gonna need to enter your license. Again, I'm going to move the screen while I fill out my license. And you'll see now, we come back. Once you enter the license, you come immediately to this quick setup environment wizard. So, and again, that's step 3 in our Portainer UI here of the document. And if we take a look here, we'll see that the application is still running in foreground. What we're going to do quickly is I'm going to shut it down by hitting Control-C, and then I'm going to bring it up in the background, okay? So I'm going to kill it out. Now you'll see it shuts it down by hitting Control-C and clear my screen here. And now I'm going to bring it up in the foreground. Docker Compose up -D the minus D is detached. That's what puts it in the background. So now if we bring it up, you'll see Traefik and Portainer is coming up. If I do a Docker logs, and you'll see for Traefik, actually we'll look at, Traefik. You'll see it loaded the configs. If I look at Portainer, you'll see that it's also up and running again. Okay, so now we should be able to come back here and check. Now again, we're gonna log in. All right, now we are back here and we came back to the main screen. All right, that was after a restart. If we click on local here, what we'll see is, the dashboard here where we can click on stacks, containers, networks, volumes, etc. Right? And then we can look here and we can see that on this particular server, it's running Portainer. Now, when I say this particular server, I mean, and again, let's switch over to the readme just so I can remind folks where we are. We've installed Docker, we've installed Nvidia, right? These are the steps we're done on. And now what we've done is we've also installed Docker and Portainer and set up Docker for Portainer and Traefik. So these parts are all done now, right? So I think we're all set on that part. Now, the last piece here is getting the edge agent. And I know I promised that there would be no more Linux, but there's one small step. Let's go back to the doc here to confirm. So now it says, okay, everything's good. We can go to the Portainer UI. We'll click on the local environment, which we did. And I think that's good. Now let's scroll through here and it talks about adding templates and creating those templates. I want to save that part for after, and you'll see standalone. We're going to get to these sections. What I want to do is I want to do all of the UI work second. I want to get all of the Linux work done first. So the one part here is where it starts talking about adding edge agents. So now, in order for us to add an edge agent, there's some things that we need to do first. So let me go over here and click on host. So the first thing I like to do is, environments, is I like to change the local name here because it's a bit confusing because local really doesn't mean a whole lot. In our particular case, our local is our orchestrator. That's where this actual Portainer image runs. And we know that because if we go to the orchestrator box here and we do a Docker PS, now you'll see Portainer's running. So we know the orchestrator is our local. So I'm going to change this to be orchestrator so that we know the name of this box is called orchestrator. Now what we're going to want to do now as part of the document is we're going to really need to add another environment. And this is where things get a little tricky. So be patient and bear with me here. So we click on add environments, right? And that's what we're going to do here. Add environments, right? Click add environments from we're going to be doing Docker, all right? And then we hit start wizard. The UI is a little different from the document and we'll be fixing that, but just so you're clear. Now, here it says agent, API, or edge agent. Be careful not to choose this. It's not what we want, right? It's edge agent. So now we give it edge agent. For this particular environment, we are going to call it transcoder. So we're on the orchestrator. We're going to create another environment for the transcoder server. Yeah, that's VPS number 2. Like I said, we just hit create. That's it. This is all correct. Create. Now you'll see it's up here and associated. And it's going to give you a Docker Swarm or a Docker standalone. Make sure you click on standalone. Okay. Now we're going to copy this. All right. And then we can say close. Now you'll see transcoder orchestrator. Now if we go to home, you'll see that transcoder still doesn't work. In order for him to work, we need to connect the edge agent with the Portainer server. And if we look here, that's the steps that they're describing here. We're going to copy this key and I'm going to save it over in my text editor and we'll come back to it. All right. Actually, I'm going to save it on the server. So I'm going to go now. This is again on the transcoder. So I'm going to make a directory here. Or actually, I'm not going to make a directory. I'm just going to make a file. Run edge agent.sh. All right, and in there, I'm going to paste the docker run command. Now, one small tweak here is we're going to need to copy this edge key out. So I'm just going to copy that in my buffer, and I'll explain to you why we're going to do that in a second. So let's save this file, and then make sure you change mod a plus x on the run edge agent. And now he's executable. We're not going to run him yet. And the reason is there's a known issue with Portainer. And that's where it talks about it right here, where it says, copy your edge key. And then there's a tool called base64 decode and encode. This sounds complicated. It sounds confusing, but I just wanted you to understand it's very simple. There is a value that is packed away in this edge key. And this base64 tool allows us to unpack it and look at it and see what the value is. And you'll see here, he's taking the edge key, right? Pasting it in the tool. He's clicking decode, and then it prints out here some values. So we need to make a change to these values that print out here so that it works properly. And the changes we got to make are portainer.rdomain.com. It should be https edge.domain.com. And this is what I was talking to you about. 2 DNS entries, one for the UI, one for the edge agent. So there is an open defect with Portainer that it prints out the Portainer name, not the edge name. So we had found through their forums a workaround to get around that. Now, once we make those changes to be edge, then we go into the UI, we put the new value in, and then we say encode, and then it will generate a new key that we can go ahead and install on the server. So now we're going to flip over to base64 decode.org to do this work. So now if I click on it here, and you see I have my edge key as well. So I paste my edge key in here, and then I hit decode. And then you'll see it reloads, and then it prints out a value. So let's copy this value. Now what I like to do is I'm going to copy this value, and I'm just going to click on encode right here. So if you click on encode, now you see we're on base64 encode.org. We were on decode.org, now we're on encode. Now we take the value from decode and we paste it in here. Now you'll see, based on the document, this right here is the problem section, okay? This is correct. This is the UI server, but this URL here is the edge server, and it's on port 8000. Well, in our case, we have Traefik proxying our request. So the proxy runs on port 443, so we can't use 8000. So that's a given. Now, by default, if we change the protocol here to be HTTPS, that is automatically port 443. So we don't even need to port if we're using HTTPS, just like this one here has S, but no port, right? Now, the difference here, this is the edge server, not the UI. So that's the change. All right, now that we have it, and I think I can still just compare it so you can see. So here's the comparison. The Portainer server, a pipe, and then you'll see Portainer Livepeer Tools 8000, and then the same fingerprint they call it at the end. Well, in this case, we changed that to be edge. We removed the port in the colon, and we added HTTPS. Okay? Now, I can make sure you delete this because you don't want that. I was just showing you. So here it is. Make sure there's no space on the end. When that's done, you hit encode. And what this is going to do is give us our new generated base64 encoded edge key. So now if we copy that value and we go back over to our transcoder and we edit the run agent, now here is the edge key, right? If you just get rid of the old one, paste in the new one, we should be good to go. Now, if all goes well, this will be the last Linux work we're going to need to do. So now I run it, docker logs -f. This is follow, so I can actually follow the logs on this server, because if anything happens, I want to see it here. Now, if you notice quickly, it already flipped the heartbeat to green, so it kind of stole our thunder a little bit. So we know at least the heartbeat works. Now, the real question is, can I click on it and actually get there? So if I click here on the transcoder, now again, that first connection can take a minute, and be patient because this is remote work that's going on. So there can be a bit of a delay, but you'll see here 0 stacks, and we're running on the transcoder server, right? So, and you'll see here that, you know, everything's looking good. It's running on the LP trans server, and if you'll see here, LP trans is the host name of the server, and an LP orc is the host name of this server. All right. Now, the logs are just printing out output, but you can see here that it connected, right, to the edge server, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. So I can kill the log now and Docker PS, and we see that it's still running. Okay. So everything's looking good at this point. We've done the decode, we've done the agent, we've verified the heartbeat, right? So at this point, all is done from a Linux setup, verification, tooling, etc. We're going to move on now to step 5, and that's where we start getting into creating all the necessary templates and stacks, and it's pretty much going to pick up exactly where we left off here. Now, just to resync, okay, we've skipped around quite a bit. I just want to cover, let's go through a quick overview of what we've accomplished so far. All right, so if you'll look, right, step 1, Docker compose. We did that on both servers. Perfect. Step 2, Traefik and Portainer. We did that on our orchestrator server, and we were able to confirm that our Portainer and edge names are working. Perfect. We've created the Docker volumes for Traefik and Portainer, right? We did that on Linux. We're going to see now with Livepeer and Prometheus and Grafana, we're going to be doing that through the UI, which again eliminates it. Here we've uploaded the Traefik config, make sure we had our cert, and then brought up the server. Now then we talked about adding additional UI or additional nodes to the application. So we originally started with LP orc, and now if you look, we have LP trans as a separate node. Now you could add up to 5 nodes for Portainer. So this is 1, this is 2. You get 3 more nodes in your license, which is cool. We're only going to use 2 today, but you can add more. And again, it's really rinse and repeating some of the steps here. Steps 3 through the end of the document will get you up and running, okay, for adding more environments. Now, here's where we diverged, right? So we said add the environment, and then we added it, and that was cool. But once that was working and it was successfully added, we want to be able to create these templates. Now, these templates are going to be shared across multiple nodes. So we're going to get into that right now. So app templates, again, this is a Portainer feature. And again, it gives you a variety of them. We're going to create some custom ones specific to Livepeer. And based on the document here, we are going to create Livepeer combined, Livepeer standalone. I'm going to create a monitoring stack, which is really Prometheus stack with a little extras for Grafana and some other niceties to have. And then I'm going to create a Livepeer transcoder. So this is standalone orchestrator, and we're going to have a Livepeer transcoder so that can actually transcode for this standalone guy. And again, they provide the examples here, and that's good for the combined orchestrator, the standalone orchestrator, and the Prometheus starter, okay? And that's awesome. I'm going to create all of the templates now. They're not just the Prometheus starter. I'm actually going to go through and create Grafana, the transcoder. So we're going to diverge here. All of these templates are going to be in a GitHub repo that we'll be sharing as part of this walkthrough. So we'll make sure that we'll include that in the notes here. But I just wanted to at least understand that at this point, we are now step 3, creating the templates is going to be where we're at now. So I'm going to stay over here in the UI now, and we're at the part where we're actually going to create some custom templates. Okay, now I have all of the templates saved, and I'm going to start pasting them in here, and I'll walk us through each of these templates. We're going to start first with the Livepeer combined, and this is Livepeer orchestrator and transcoder that's together in one stack, it's going to bring up both the orchestrator and the transcoder. So now I'm going to copy this in, and I'm going to paste the values in and walk us through it. So here is the stack. The name is Combined Orchestrator for the Docker service. You'll notice that we have the Nvidia runtime here, and this document is 29. At the release, there's 33, and I'm going to upgrade it now. We're going to use 33 instead of 29 for this demo. I'm out on the edge here trying something new, but guess what? We live on the edge. If there's issues, we'll work through it. So then here, as you know, you need to have a port so that you can actually take the streams in. And in this case, we're using 8935. We have a Docker volume called LP data, that's external. And we're going to be using the Livepeer network. And inside the container, we'll be storing this Livepeer config file at this lpcombine.conf. And it's going to use this mapped volume, which is basically root LP data. And that's where this LP combine file is going to be stored. We're going to upload all of these files using the UI here. So if you're wondering how we're going to get there, and if you don't want to upload it that way, you can always use the command line. But you know, the whole spirit of the thing is a single UI management for all of it. Okay, so that's Livepeer combine. So we're going to save that. All right, we're going to add another one here. And this one is going to be the Livepeer standalone. So here, Livepeer standalone, I can type. And this is a Livepeer standalone orchestrator. All right, and again, all this is fine. Linux, everything's good. Boom. Now we'll walk through this guy. You'll see standalone orchestrator. Again, we're going to upgrade it from 29 to 33. Standalone orchestrator, right? No Nvidia runtime here, right? Because this guy, although you can run it on a transcoder server, ideally a standalone orchestrator is not a beefy GPU expensive VPS. It's an inexpensive one that has enough resources to manage streams, but not the capabilities of transcoding. And you'll see that you know, it has an LP data, and it also has a configuration file, in our case lporchestrator.conf, and it uses a volume and a network. But that's it. So now we have this guy, orchestrator, and we're going to need to make sure that that config file is on our server. And in this case, it's going to be on LP orc, not LP trans. Those are our two VPS, VPS 1 and 2. All right. So that's standalone. Now we're going to get into the transcoder, the standalone transcoder. So in this case, I'm calling this one Livepeer transcoder. Okay. And this is Livepeer remote transcoder. The remote transcoder is going to connect to the standalone orchestrator. One big happy family. Now, if we paste that, again, upgrading it to 33, and his name is transcoder, he also needs the Nvidia runtime because, again, transcoding requires that. He has the LP data volume, and he's got his LP transcoder config, and we will make sure that we modify these files and upload them properly. So that's the transcoder, okay? Create the template. Now, we have one more template. It was called Prometheus in the document, and that's because it's just Prometheus. But I'm going to call this one Monitor because it's Prometheus, it's Grafana, it's Node Exporter, and it's CADvisor. These, to me, are essential monitoring and metrics collection tools that you got to have on your server. Now, again, Grafana, you probably have a single server for that. You don't need to install it with the monitoring, but hey, however you want to carve it up. This is a Prometheus, Node Exporter, and CADvisor are definitely stacks that you got to have running, especially in a Docker managed world. So again, those are the options. And if we look here at the stack, and we'll walk through this, if you look at the Prometheus starter from the guide, The only thing that's not there is Grafana, and I just added that. Grafana uses port 3000, and you'll see here I have a Grafana data and a Grafana config. Neither of these folders are important per se. We don't need to put any values in there. We just need to have them saved after restarting Grafana. So that's why we have those two volumes. And I like to separate configuration from data. And you'll see here I do the same for Prometheus, right? I want to separate the config folder from the data. Again, just something I like to do. And we'll need to upload this Prometheus YAML file to our etc Prometheus file directory, which is part of the Prometheus config, which again we'll get to in the UI here. 9090 is the port that it's going to use, Cadvisor, node exporter, and then you'll see here a series of volumes. We're going to need to create these volumes and these networks on the respective box. Now that this is here, we have these and everything looks good. All right, so let's create the templates. Now there was a bunch of things in those templates that we have to prepare in order for that to work. So now if you'll see here, create the templates, right? So if we go back to our document, I think at this point now we're satisfied with templates. Okay, so that's done. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to leave this window open. I'm going to open a separate window. And again, remember, depending on which server you're deploying which of these stacks to, you need to do the networks and volumes on that server. So for now, we're going to start with the standalone and Livepeer transcoder stacks, which means this is going to run on VPS 1 and this one's going to run on VPS 2. And then we'll end the walkthrough with VPS 2 combined and monitor. All right, so we'll go through these two first and we'll walk through the entire stack creation and setup. And for the Livepeer standalone, the important things here, as we noted, and let's just go quickly view this one more time. This guy has an LP data volume and a Livepeer network. So when we're doing this, we're going to make sure that LP data, Livepeer network's there. And we're also going to have to upload this config file to that server. And there's some other supplemental files. We'll get to those, but let's at least start now with these parts, the LP data volume and the Livepeer network. So as I said, I'm going to open another window that's going to go over the networks. And I'm going to leave this up so we can use it as a reference point. So if I go over here and I say add network, this one is Livepeer. So we look here, network is Livepeer. Now, there's nothing you need to change. You can do whatever Docker settings you want if you're an expert here, but in this case, we just want one network to isolate Livepeer traffic, okay? And we say create. So we are on the transcoder now, and I'm going to jump to the orchestrator because that's where we're going to need that as well. So both of them need the Livepeer network. We'll go over here to the network of the orchestrator, and you'll see Portainer's here. So we want to keep Portainer and Livepeer separate. So now we have Livepeer also on the orchestrator. So these are just logical networks. They don't really mean anything. So here's Livepeer here. And then if we're on the transcoder, we see Livepeer. Okay. So now if we click on volumes and add volume, in this case, LP data, same thing. You don't need to do anything special. If you really want to do some configuration and tweaking, you can, and this is the default, right? We have an LP data. Now you can see there's a browse function here, which is part of the Portainer suite of tools. We'll get to that. We're going to need Prometheus config. All right. We're going to need Prometheus data. All right. We're going to need Grafana config. All right. And we're going to need Grafana data. Again, I'm just creating these with names and not changing any value. Config, Grafana data, Prometheus config, Prometheus data, and LP data. All of these volumes are ready to go. Now let's go back over to the orchestrator and we'll go to volumes. And you'll see these are the volumes there on the orchestrator, Portainer, and Traefik, right? So we'll add now, we're going to add LP data here and the volume, okay? And you can see right now not being used. All right, so now he's done, right? We got our networks, we got our volumes on both VPS1 and VPS2. So now we got that out of the way. Now we can continue finishing our preparation steps, right? So these are the steps that are needed to proclaim victory, right? This is something I didn't notice before, but on the orchestrator, which is the Portainer server, I don't have the browse feature. And I don't know if I've noticed that before. So unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to modify the standalone config file for this on the server here. And I know I promised twice now. I broke a promise. You guys probably hate me, but I am so sorry. We're going to need to actually do one more Linux server settings here. So if I go to LP, if I go to the volume for Livepeer, and again, if I go to var lib docker and then the volume name, right? Volume and then the name. So in our case, we have LP data. And then if you look at data, now there's no files here. So as I pointed out from the browser, and if we go back to the custom templates, right? The Livepeer standalone one here, if we edit him, he needs this lporg.com. All right, and I'm going to paste the combination or the actual files values that are needed here, and you'll see here this is for standalone orchestrator. We're using Arbitrum 1's RPC. You will need to enter your ETH account here. Now I have a throwaway ETH address that I'm going to use. This does not have any money. It's not active on Livepeer. So, and I do not use this because I will not be providing the password or private key. That will be hidden. Which again, you should be protecting your private keys. I have my CLI address. This matches the Docker service name. If you look over here in our orchestrator, you'll see the host name and container name and service name all match. And that's so that this will work with that port. Now, in this case, you're going to need your IP address, right? Your orchestrator IP address. All right. So 4579. All right, now in this orc address, again, this is the IP address of the orchestrator when your remote transcoder is going to connect to it. Okay, now you'll see here, we are going to need an orc secret, and we're also going to need an ETH secret, and we're going to need the private key for this. And that private key has to exist at the same root directory. So right where this file is, all of these other files, orc secret, ETH secret, and also the key store file, the JSON file, will need to be placed here. All right, now we need an ETH secret, and we also need an orc secret.cc. These, again, for expert Livepeer folks like yourself, you know what your values are. These are protected values, so I'm not going to share them. I'm going to move them off, and I'm also going to put in here my ETH account.json. My files are created, the configs are there, the values I need are all in place. Okay, now, all right, so these files are now staged on the orchestrator. So we got the orchestrator conf, work secret, ETH secret, and account JSON. So here, ETH account we've uploaded to the orchestrator, but we did not upload it to the transcoder, and we did not upload the Prometheus file, and we did not upload the orchestrator and transcoder combined file. So we still got some more files to do, but thankfully they'll be done through the UI. This time I really mean it. All right, so we're going to install or configure the files, and I've created a directory on my PC here, and I'm created the shell files that are needed from there. So I just wanted to show you what files we need. Each of these files are updated and ready for our scenario. Oh wait, we need one more file, Prometheus YAML. And then let's just walk through the config one more time. The transcoder has 242's address, right? And the e-secret. He has the ETH address, 242 is his service and orc address, right? Because he's the remote transcoder that this guy is going to connect to. And then in this scenario, it is 73 is going to run the orc and the transcoder, which is what these two settings are. So it looks like these files are ready to go and saved. Now the goal is to upload them to the respective volume. So now if I hit on, and again we're on the transcoder, right? So if I hit browse, and there's an upload section here, I'm going to click upload. So now, without further ado, we're going to go in here and start creating our stacks. And for our case, we're going to start first with the orchestrator, the standalone orchestrator, okay? We're going to test the standalone orchestrator, then we're going to bring up the standalone or the remote transcoder and have him connect to this orchestrator, okay? So let's see what happens. We hit add stack. Now in this case, we're going to call it orchestrator. All right, that's the stack name. Is the I'm not good with names, so you can come up with your own name. Orchestrator is what it's going to be for me. Now we say custom template here because we have them defined, and we get to create one from our standalone orchestrator. Okay, nothing special here to do, right? It's just going to give you all the settings. You can change the names or do anything here, but we created these stacks so that if you upload the file and you set the network properly, everything's just going to work. So now if we deploy this guy, now it may take a second here, so be patient when waiting for this. So could be downloading the Docker images, like it can take a second, and it's doing it over the remote network, so be patient. All right, now the stack is there. It's green. That means the image is up to date. Let's quickly jump in here and look at logs. Because if everything goes well, we should see, let me turn off auto refresh so we can read the log here. And you see, running on Arbitrum, it has my ETH account here and it's standalone orchestrator, right? And now he's up and running and he's receiving a ping request. So this guy is ready to go. And if you leave him run on refresh, you'll see some block watching in here. You see fetching blocks. That's cool. So now he's up. That's awesome. So that's the orchestrator. Now I'm going to leave this guy run here. I'm going to flip over now to the transcoder. Let me go to stacks, add stack, and I'm going to call this remote transcoder. Okay. And we're going to choose from the template. And here he is, Livepeer transcoder. Again, nothing needed. We've already staged all the files and all the networks and all that stuff. So now we should just be able to hit deploy, and if everything goes well, when he comes up, we should see him over here connect. So I'm going to watch this log while that one runs. Now we just got to be patient here because remember, it takes a second for this image to download. All right, now let's switch over quickly. There it is. You see, we got it from 73, right? That's our remote transcoder. Sweet. Now now we're up and running, right? We got a remote orchestrator going, and if we go over here and take a look at this guy, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm smiling from ear to ear because it actually worked the first time without issues. And you'll see here, right? Registering transcoder to 242, and that's our standalone org. So we got it, man. It's working. Now, I'm going to delete this stack because we don't want that running at this point, right? No sense in having it run. So we're going to take him down. And again, you see how easy it is. We can bring him right back up. Now, let's just do that just for fun. Org. Now, if you look at this guy, he's going to fail. Says there's no one there. So if we go back and say org, add custom template, Livepeer standalone, and go. And if we look at him, he should say, hey, my guy's back. Hey, there he is, I'm back. And then we go over here and look at the orchestrator. Now, how cool is that, right? You're talking about down and up, man. There it is. He's down and up. He was deleted and recreated in just seconds. Sweet. And again, that's it, right? So that's the orchestrator. I'm going to delete this guy, as I said. So he's now gone. And I'm also going to remove the remote transcoder, okay? And that way we can start now with the full stack here. So from this point on, we've able to test and verify that our stacks working, Livepeer configs are all good. Now, we don't need orchestrator. I think we're pretty much done with him. I mean, again, you can tweak and play around with your multi-node environment as you see fit. But for the duration here, or for the last part is, I want to bring up a combined orchestrator on this transcoder box. So when orc's going to be there, transcoder is going to run in one Livepeer deployment, and then I'm going to have a Grafana monitoring stack that I'm going to bring up as well. So let's jump in. So on the transcoder, right? Now this is LP or Livepeer combined. All right, so this is the actual combine. And again, custom template. We're going to create it from the combine. Our files are stored already, right? Livepeer combine. Now, what I'm going to do for this demo is I was going to downgrade it to 29 and show an upgrade. But again, if I put it at 29, it's going to download that image again. It's going to take some time. You can do the same. When the next release comes out, if you wanted to upgrade it, you go to your running stack, you change it to the new version, and now you're up. Right? So it's not so difficult. But here it is, Livepeer combined, right? We looked at that file. It's using Nvidia runtime, port, all the stuff we know. Deploy. Now you'll see this one's a lot faster, right? That image is downloaded already. So now this is important because we got to make sure that this guy is working. So now you'll see up and running. Let me turn off refresh here. So up and running, right? You'll see now he's got Nvidia devices for transcoding. We'll see these normal error messages. Again, I'm not quite sure exactly why they're there, but this doesn't impede or impact performance or orchestration. Now you'll see it unlocked the proper ETH account, and then you'll also see that my orc's inactive, right? But then you'll also see it's running in orchestrator mode doing that. And you'll see here that 73 is his name, and he's up and running. So this is the point in which Livepeer would start sending streams through, or you would start sending stream through if you had broadcasters set up. So we're done with this part. So at least we know the combined orchestrator on the transcoder box is working, which is where we are. Now, the cool part. Let's now deploy our monitor stack. So monitor, right? And I'm going to use the same custom template here. Choose monitor, right? And again, port 3000, we got to make note of 9090 is what we're going to be using from Prometheus. And in fact, we can even turn this one off. But I want to show you in the browser that these things are working. Our network's configured, everything's set up. Now we just hit create. Now this one, again, we have 3 or 4 stacks in here. So these images are going to take a little bit. All right, now you'll see here, Prometheus is up, CatVisor is up. And this guy is showing that this guy needs an image update. So if you just bear with me, we'll get to that in a second. Looks like I have a typo in my Prometheus YAML. It's probably spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that guy. Let's look and see if Grafana is up properly. Yes, Grafana is up properly. You'll see that. And these other 2, node exporter, they're not really going to show anything. So for now, what I'm going to do is just stop this guy. Now, this is the part in which you want to go back to your volume. You're going to download your Prometheus file, right? Your Prometheus config, and you're going to make sure that that file is proper, all right? I am going to open it in my text editor, and I missed a space somewhere. Let's see where it is. 1, 2, 1, 2. There it is, 1. You see that? That was missed. And that one. So now these are good. Oh boy, that can be painful. I would recommend using a tool that has YAML validation in it so you don't run into these issues. But again, I am so glad that it's there, right? So I'm going to delete this version and I'm going to upload it because this is perfect, right? If it works perfect for me and you have issues, how would you know what to do? But in this case now, we uploaded the new file. Now if we go back to the stacks, we go to monitor. Now I want to do something here quick. I just want to just touch the file so that it can force me to, it's going to prompt me to update images. Now watch this. So you see this latest image? I'm going to say yes. And that way, that Prometheus image that was said to be latest, that wasn't, it's going to go check. And you'll see here, it's taking a little longer this time because it has to download. Now you see they're all green because it downloaded the latest. Now this time, hopefully, Prometheus is running. So now you'll see Prometheus is properly running. Now, since this is running on the transcoder, I have a DNS name set up for him, and his name is trans.livepeertools. So I'm just going to, just for now, copy this and go over there. You don't need to do that. I just like to have my work in transcoders with separate DNS names. So in this case, we're going to go to 9090 for Prometheus. As you can see, that bad boy's up and running. Now again, you'll see here for Livepeer, standalone orchestrator 7935. So we have another error here. Let's make sure we check it. Standalone. Oh, it's not standalone. This one would be combined, right? So this guy is combined orchestrator. And how do you know that? Let's go over here and take a look at stacks. So Livepeer combined. And if we look at the name here, combined orchestrator, that's his name. So that's how we know that combined orchestrator should be here. So I can save this. Now again, I'm going to go back to the stacks. I'm going to stop monitor, right? And I'm going to go over to volumes and Prometheus config. Oops, sorry, browse. I always do that. I don't know why. Delete the file. You can overwrite it. I'm sure it works, but I'm just deleting it and recreating it because I don't like many restarts. So again, same file, upload him, go back to the stacks. And in this case, we want to start him. So start. And for real this time, he should work, right? Let's see, he's back up. And if we flip over here, and now you see up, 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 up. Everyone's up. So that's good. Now, time to flip over to port 3000 and take a peek at Grafana and see what's going on there. Now, obviously, you need to create your admin account. You guys know this stuff. Admin, admin, super secure password changed. And now you see, right? Grafana is up, Prometheus is up. Now let's go to Mile, right? Let's get this whole thing done here. So if we look at the final steps, right, it's going to be to add a data source. And we're going to want to add Prometheus, right? Now for this one, it's cool because it's all containerized, so you don't need IPs and ports unless you're connecting to a remote Prometheus. But in this case, it's all in the same Docker environment. So we just give Prometheus and 9090, right? That's the name of the service in Docker, port 9090. And if all goes well, we should be able to hit save and test. And there it is. Data source is working. Now, what I want to do before going any further here is I want to shut down port 9090 so that we don't expose that to the internet. Okay, so right now, if you look, we can get to this guy and we also can get to this guy. And technically, you don't really want that part out there. This, the Prometheus data. You can leave it open. I know a lot of orchestrators do. I tend to type things wrong, apparently. I tend to try to minimize as many ports that I have open. So this currently is open, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this alone, and we still know everything's working here. We'll come back to that Grafana in a second. But I'm going to go into the monitor stack, and I'm going to type editor. And as I said before, if you simply, I'm going to comment it out so you can see, but I want to take this out. And what's going to happen here is I update the stack. You see right here, it's 9090. And when I update it, it's not going to show that anymore, just like these others don't show the port. So you see here, now if I go back to Prometheus, it ain't going to show me, right? It's a DNS error because, or it's a connection refused because 9090 is no longer open. Now, again, if you're testing, you may want to keep that open, but just showing you reduce the attack surface of your Livepeer instance. Now, if we go back to the dashboard, and you'll see we're still working here, right? Everything's good. We may need to log in. I don't think so. Yep. Nope, we're good. So here we are logged in. Now, the cool part here is, I mean, we're really pretty much done here. As you can see, all of these are done, but you'll notice CADvisor and Node Exporter. Node Exporter is a host monitoring application, and CADvisor, or I should say it's a plugin inside of Prometheus, a data collector. So Node Exporter is for the host, CADvisor is for all the Docker environments. So the cool thing is that they have predefined dashboards for those tools. And that's why I love using open source tools. So here, if you look at Grafana, CADvisor, dashboard. Now you can see I am just so bad at typing, but Google is so good. Now I click on this guy, and it goes to this dashboard search from Grafana Labs. And if you just copy the ID of this guy, now I would recommend that you trust you know who's building these. Now I've used this CADvisor and Node Exporter dashboards for quite a bit, and I trust them. So you could also feel safe in that. But the cool part here is if you go to the dashboards and you say import, and then you actually put in an identifier here and say load, it'll load that predefined dashboard from grafana.com. And then if you choose your Prometheus and say import, boom, bingo, bango, bongo, now you got CADvisor exporting data for Prometheus. Now let's shrink this down to 5 minutes. And I want you to see here, combined orchestrator, right? He's got very little CPU usage right now. Node Exporter, Grafana, Prometheus, the Portainer Edge agent. It's showing you the memory usage for each, which you'll see Livepeer is using, 119 megs. It's maxed at 126. So you'll see each of these. Prometheus is a hefty guy. So you gotta, this tool is good for CADvisor, right? It's showing you what the containers are using, network traffic. I mean, all kinds of stuff in here. Now, the other cool part is, and this is where we're gonna end, is Grafana, Node Exporter, and again, they have another dashboard, same thing. Trust them. You can see these downloads are massive. These are definitely trusted dashboards. So now again, that was CADvisor. Let's go back in here, and we're gonna go to dashboard browse, and we're gonna import another dashboard and load. And again, choose the obligatory Prometheus. And then again, you'll see here, Node Exporter is, we're running this on a single host, right? And that's our transcoder. You could run this on as many hosts and collect as many host data as you want. But in this case, we're running on our single host. And if we set it to 5 minutes, because we don't have much data, you can see kicking out all kinds of useful file systems, root volume, memory use, swap, uptime, network traffic. And again, tons and tons of panels with, oodles of useful info. Again, I call these must-haves, right? You got to have this stuff. If you don't have these running on your nodes, you're pretty much blind. But that will cap off the entire stack, soup to nuts, using Portainer and Docker all through, this walkthrough that was created by myself, Mike Zuper, Authority Noel from the Livepeer Discord community, Papa Bear also from the Livepeer Discord community. Thank you all for sticking this out, making it to the very end, and watching me deviate from documented procedures and run into issues and troubleshooting and everything. So again, thank you for those that stayed. Good luck in your deployments, and may all your upgrades be simple and easy. Until then, I'll see you guys in Discord. Thanks. This is Mike Zuper signing off.